Good afternoon. How's it going? It is Fabrizio Aiello. Thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to be doing some inking. It's been a while since I streamed, so I have a couple of drawings that I need to finish up, which maybe I'll throw on the website for sale or have the next Alterna auction. But first, I got the new issue. So thanks everybody for backing. Issue 2. Let's kind of go through it a little bit here. It's a lot of fun. The printing looks great. It's really exciting to see issue 2 come out, because issue 1 is sort of the, you have the first 2 short stories, and then issue 2 kind of picks up at the end of the Smoke Man. So when you get into it, you'll see that the story arc progresses quite a bit, and actually for the next couple of issues we're gonna get to the resolution of that. So anyway, today I'm gonna be drawing. So these might look familiar from a while back. I'm probably gonna jump back and forth, finish these both up today so I can start something fresh next time. But I'll take a look. Oh, hey, Midnight Mausoleum. How's it going? Just got done taping the show just in time. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, as soon as Halloween and the fall kicks in, just sitting back, drawing and listening and watching your show is so conducive to being creative, especially for the genre and all that kind of stuff. I think I need some background music. It's been a while since I did this. I feel a little odd. Let's see here. Music should help. Alrighty. Let's see here. So these were a couple of just sort of one-off images I did. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll just come up with these scenarios or scenes with some characters, and then that'll sort of trigger a storyline for me. So that's what I did with these two. I definitely have a story in mind for this character and sort of the setting. For this is still sort of brewing. So hopefully by the time I get to the end of the drawing, I'll have a better idea of maybe a story to go along with it. And sometimes it just kind of goes into a folder, and it could be months or years later. You're kind of picking through your pile of stuff, and something kind of speaks to you then. So I never dismiss anything entirely. There are characters and sketches that must be a decade old that I've sort of brought back to life to use for Horace or some game illustration or just things in general. I've been listening to a lot of like ancient Egyptian stuff. That includes like the Ancient Aliens, which is just too much fun. And I have been hopefully planting some Easter eggs with Horace. There's some Egyptian stuff that'll kind of come up with that. So I'm hoping to later on introduce some characters and some history with that. Now for this, the sky was really giving me a problem last time, and it's probably a bad idea to jump right into the sky. I would argue sky is probably one of the trickiest things to draw and to ink, because you really don't get the I don't know. It's very difficult to randomize clouds so they don't look bad. Kind of like rocks in a way. It's so natural to repeat shapes and spacing on things. So We'll see how this works out. I always have white out. Yeah, now that I'm streaming again, I definitely have some things planned. I'm going to do some more of those videos, like the process videos I was doing about writing, just in general, about dialogue, things that I've learned over the past couple of years, just things that you notice. So I will do some of those videos. Those have been pretty fun. Process, like being aware of your process is so important, because if you kind of just put your head down and move forward without analyzing, you can kind of get, not to name names, but there's some artists that don't really progress, and they become caricatures of themselves sometimes. And that's not to say you can't experiment with different styles, but you really have to be aware. I might really go a dry brush for these clouds too. But first thing I'll do is just put a bit of a silhouette, get some structure to it first, then go back in and do the shadow. I think it's so weird about clouds to me. Not that people wanted to hear about clouds today on Sunday at 5 o'clock, but it's that they have volume and form and they cast shadow, and that always blew my mind. Like, I don't know how to draw clouds, they're not solid, but yeah, you know, there's shadows underneath those, underneath the forms. Not that these are clouds, they're sort of like a combination between clouds and smoke. What I was thinking is either one of two things with this. Either these are sort of clouds being generated, or the clouds are sort of being sucked into the top of this pyramid, which I thought might be kind of a cool thing. And that's where, you know, the idea that this isn't a solid story yet, the images and sort of the end product will kind of put me in a specific direction. It is kind of funny because I started this quite a while ago. I can already see my line work here is a little different. It's hard not to progress or change at all over the course, you know, of an issue, in between issues. Hopefully people can see the difference between issue 1 and issue 2 in the quality, at minimum in the effort. You know, I have a big double page spread in that. There's more scenes, more characters, more atmosphere. And it's really the only way you can progress that much, is just really setting the goal high and then seeing if you can achieve it or not. You'll learn something along the way, even if it is that you can't do that. Bad guys always have to be asymmetrical in their faces. It just has to happen. Maybe one of these days I'll do a very different villain that is hyper symmetrical, but man, they just look so good when they're asymmetrical. Like his mouth is extraordinarily asymmetrical. We have a couple of pyramids in the back. I really want them to recede, so I just want like the barest silhouette and line. So I kind of little bit of an issue with the smoke here. I don't want it to run into the other smoke. So I'm gonna have to figure that out. It was funny, whenever I was coming up with Horace H. Hoover, the name, obviously the first thing I was thinking is like, I want alliteration, just like every other sort of Marvel character. And I know people kind of pile on about that as it being a bad thing, but I love it. I love Peter Parker, and you can go down, Reed Richards, I don't care what it is, but it's so memorable whenever you do that I'm like, okay, that was rule number one. There's got to be alliteration to Horace H. Hoover. And when I was thinking about Horace, it never occurred to me of like sort of the Egyptian analog. I don't know why. And ironically, it wasn't until I was looking at research, I think it was probably the 20s, 30s, and I'm looking at cults, New York, supernatural, things like that, and Aleister Crowley pops up, which I'm familiar with Aleister Crowley, but not that much. And apparently he had a cult. I'm probably going to get it wrong now. It was the cult of, it starts with a T, like Themla or something, but their big thing was the Age of Horus, which I'm like, that is fantastic. So that'll definitely pop up, I think. I can't pass that up. This is also one of those times where I had to adjust my audio, and it turns out that nobody can hear me talking for an hour and a half. Maybe that's for the best sometimes. Maybe. When I was doing issue 3, I mentioned this before, but I had been doing there's a lot of caves and rocks in issue 3, and I guess I hadn't really drawn them before. I had, you draw a rock here, but not extensively. Like, you don't really have like a fundamental understanding or grasp of the structure of rocks until you do a lot. But I did issue 3. There's a lot of caves, a lot of rocks. And I got to the end. I finished the book, and I got to the end, and I had somebody look at it, and they're like, those rocks are not great. And that was really tough to hear, but I definitely needed to hear it. So I spent a couple of weeks, I don't know how long it was, just drawing rocks. and just from photos too. I didn't look at like comic book rocks or anything like that. I wanted real life rocks, and then I'd sort of do my version of comic book rocks instead of trying to find some other artist who's done them and then translating that. I think that's always dicey, because then you're presented with a scenario that artist didn't have, and you don't know how to translate it then. So I spent weeks and weeks just doing these rocks over and over again. And I mean, it worked in the end. I mean, I was really happy with how everything worked out. And I know if I ever need to do rocks or caves again in the future, I really have a really good grasp on how to do that. And as far as clouds and whatnot, I actually did spend some time doing clouds too. Because that's something, it doesn't pop up enough where you become an expert at doing clouds unless your particular book or series is set in the sky or something like that. It just pops up once in a while. And because of that, you don't have as much experience doing it. His hose is another challenge, depending on what's going on in the scene and the backdrop. Like, I have to draw his hose a little differently because it's black. It's mostly black. But if the scene is really dark, if there's a lot of shadows, if he's in front of something really dark, then I can't always do that. So then I have to come up with sort of a couple variations of the hose, and then just adjust accordingly. But the hose is it's one of those final touches for me whenever I'm doing Horace. I usually leave it until the last thing. Now this, even if it might be accurate to have this sort of core highlight, I don't really like it. I like the idea of having it go black and then just pop a little bit of the lights, which I will do here in a second, just so you can see the difference. So we'll say this is the literal illustration, but I kind of think the top will make that a highlight, so we'll just black that part out, and then maybe just the highlight where it curves at the top. So what this does, it definitely gives it a little more depth as opposed to sort of laying flat, because the hose is really, it's traversing a fair amount of space. It goes from the front around to the back, and then up, and then over into the top. So it's kind of it's not a cheat, it's just it's a visual, we'll say, trick, something that I do for the hose. So we got light coming from right in the back, so this whole side's going to be lit. So I don't want to do too much shadow on this side, but I do want a lot of texture. which sometimes is just, we'll call them random dots, sure. Saw that Dan Green had passed this past week, which was a bummer. I don't think anybody's ever looked at my work and saw Dan Green in the inking, but he's a huge influence on me. He does something real specific with his lines, which I do a little more than I did here, but he'll do this like, if this is a muscle, he'll do like a line and then he'll kind of like do these little chips. Because they're not very, it's not very technical, but he'll do this kind of thing. Which I love. I do that a lot, actually. Because it's quick. Instead of really, doing the sort of Scott Williams, he does these just little chips with it. And you need a very, very sharp brush to do that. And a lot of confidence. But yeah, he was a huge influence. His X-Men stuff with Silvestri is some of my favorite work. I'm doing these sort of concept promo pieces of artwork. Again, I have total latitude on what I can do because it's not for anything just yet. So if I want to come up with a new language for an alien world, I can start putting that language here, like in these stones. Some hints of it here, and then later on I can reference that and actually, I don't want to say make it make sense, but ground it in something. I can repeat it, I can have it pop up in other places. Definitely need more dark. Need to bring this down. John Slongbox. Lefty, didn't the nuns tie your hand to your chair and make you they tried. Well, actually, no, the nuns didn't. My family did, though. I had an aunt come over to my house. Me and my one brother are both left-handed. And when the rest of my family found that out, it was like an emergency. It was almost like an intervention. I remember one night, my aunt came over with some tabs or some tablets and some pens and really tried to get us to write with our right hands, and she was just dismayed that we were both left-handed. She left disappointed. She probably thought we would end up in prison, because that's what happens, as soon as you start writing with your left hand, it's pretty much over. I think so, at least. Yeah, I think my audio is working, right? I really liked the video of Death in the Family today, John. I actually hadn't thought about that book in, to be completely honest, I don't know, a couple of decades. I haven't read it in so long. But it was, the first time I read it, it was pretty impactful, I'm not gonna lie. Seeing the Joker kill him with a crowbar, it was pretty nuts. It's always fun to hear other people's take on the book. Especially whenever I read that, it was just me. There wasn't YouTube to like see what other people thought of it, reviewers, you know, it was just, I read it and then I moved on. So it's not like I could strike up a conversation with somebody at school or... It's pretty difficult to get these bricks dark enough without uniformly doing hatching. And as soon as you do that with something organic, like a stone, it's just gonna look like metal plates or something like that. Technically, what I really should be doing is stippling the entire side of this, which is not going to happen. I used to do stuff like that, though. When I was in high school, or before high school, when time was unlimited, I used to do extraordinarily detailed pen and ink drawings. Really detailed. I have one. I don't think I've ever posted it, though. It's like a fantasy. Some zombies coming out of the ground, but the sky is entirely stippled. It's like a dusk sky. It was pretty crazy. The scene in my head. This is a bit of a spoiler, but not quite. Or just like a cover of an issue one of these days where Horace is standing there and there's several people sort of like bowing down to him, worshiping him. And there's Egyptian like artifacts and everything around him. And he's trying to explain to them, no, it's Horace, which I thought would be kind of funny. I did actually, now that I think about it, there is a Horace Hoover, Horace H. Hoover from Pennsylvania that died in World War II, I think. I have to double check. I remember Googling it one time. So there was, ironically, or coincidentally, I should say, they were from Pennsylvania. Now, I didn't actually do my due diligence to see if he did wear a vacuum cleaner on his head, just to make sure there were no potential lawsuits. But I don't want to track down his great granddaughter and ask her if she remembers her grandfather wore a vacuum cleaner on his head or not. I can do a little dry brush on this too, because obviously it's stone. It's not perfect. Well, actually a lot of these a lot of the stonework is so accurate, but I'm not doing that here. So we're gonna do a little dry brush, which I rarely do. Alright, I think that pyramid is probably good. I think that's good. And when all is said and done, what I can do is, since I'm the one doing the coloring and et cetera, I can always kind of make the decision, do I bring this whole side of the pyramid down darker in ink, or do I do that in color? They both have their benefits. So I can always make that call, as opposed to, you know, this has to work as a 2D black and white illustration and only illustration. Oh, hey, Brian Sudleyol. How's it going? Thank you. I appreciate you guys popping in. It's a pretty chill Sunday. Hey Logan, how's it going? I feel inadequate when I watch you. I feel like I will never be as talented as anything as you are with that brush. You totally will, 100%. I mean, I've said that 8,000 times. I'll never get to a certain point, and you just kind of put your head down, don't look at the clock, or a calendar, I should say, and you'll get there. Like, it's inevitable. As long as you're conscious of what you're doing, you absolutely can. And that's not to say I'm great. I just mean progress. You know, we're all progressing. You know, we're all learning. I was talking about that earlier. I mean, the line work that I did on Horace here maybe 5 or 6 months ago is actually different than the line work I'm doing today. So it's a constant thing. It can be a constant thing as long as you're very aware of how you're approaching things, what you're spending your practice time on. I did a video, not to plug the video or anything, but kind of how I approach practicing and what's worked for me. Doesn't mean it works for everybody, but for me, it makes the most sense that if I know that I'm going to be doing clouds, you know, in the next issue or the next page or something like that, I'll sit down during my hour-and-a-half practice time every night. And I'm like, okay, I won't do anatomy tonight, I'll do clouds. That way, when I sit down to do clouds the next day, I feel more confident. Even if, you know, how much can you learn about clouds in an hour and a half? That I don't know. But, you know, you at least have a bit of confidence when you sit down to do it. Just got done rearranging the living room and moved everything but the patio. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of work, though. I try to keep my Sundays. I like to lift occasionally this brush. This is the most lifting I try to do on Sundays. I'm just joking. Yeah, Sundays is always a bit of cleaning, getting ready for the week. I'm in Pennsylvania and it's still really hot here. I can't wait for the fall. Halloween. Can't wait. So for this pyramid, the other thing I have to decide is we have 3 values. We have essentially white, then we have, we'll say 2 on the grayscale, and then maybe a 4. I know that for sure I don't, and this isn't 100% of the time, I don't want to take that white sky and put a bunch of marks in it unless I'm trying to do like a real specific effect. So for that sky, I'll definitely leave that into the coloring, you know, so that will knock that back a little bit. So if this is a 2, this will be, you know, a 1, because I'm not going to keep it white. Even though white in comics isn't used as much as it used to be, and I plan on using it a lot more. I have some covers where I'm using white. Like if you take a look at old covers in particular, but interiors too, they really manage to utilize white as a color, and it's pretty clever, and it really makes everything pop even more when you have things on a white background. Now, it can also look like basically a void, you know, sometimes. But if you do it correctly, it looks absolutely great. I have a Pinterest board where I essentially just pin old comic book covers that I loved. Because I don't really, you know, I don't have time to pull out the actual comic that I have just to look at the cover. So that is pretty nice. I'm like, oh man, I love that, you know, Marvel Tales with Spider-Man and Captain Britain or something like that. So that way I always have access to the book, even though I don't have, or I have access to the cover, even though I don't have access to the book. I think I'll definitely be selling these at the next Alterna auction, or again, I mentioned I've been putting stuff on my website on HoraceHoover.com, commissions and things like that, so I might just throw this up there. And this will be, yeah, this will sort of, I'm considering it concept art, so things may change. Yeah, so now I'm actually, you know, putting some shading on the cloud, smoke, whatever we're calling it right now. So you just really got to treat parts of the smoke like you would anything else, almost like a great stuff foam or something. You know, it looks light, but it has volume, and it casts shadow, and it has highlights. Brian, make sure to scan it in for an art book down the road. Yeah, definitely. I'm pretty good about scanning in all the artwork that I do. Like all the sketch cards I've done, I'm pretty sure I have high-res scans of everything. It's just nice to look at them. Because honestly, some of those sketch cards turned out so nice that I wanted to at least be able to reference them sometimes. Hey, Dr. Dr. Mask, how's it going? Thank you. Yeah, I started this a while ago. I'm just trying to finish it up today. If you let it go too long, then it's hard to finish it because you don't like any part of it. So I just gotta make sure I just finish this off and move on to the next drawing, next issue. It was funny whenever I was first doing sort of concept stuff for this particular scene. I'm like, okay, I started sketching something, and I'm like, damn it, that's Mumra. I just redrew Mumra from the Thundercats. I'm like, all right, I gotta start over. I'm like, I did it again. It's like, it's Mumra again. I was obsessed. And then it really struck me that Mumra is a freaking great design. What a great character. Alright, so I did quite a bit in the background. I think I'm going to move up to the foreground here. Let that sit, see how I feel about that. I want to make sure that Horace has the most contrast of the entire piece, because that'll just pop him forward, you know. And as far as the rules of atmospheric perspective, the further back you go, the lighter and the less contrast an object will have. So it's one of those rules. If you pay attention to it, it can really work in your favor. But if you make everything gray, it just automatically pushes things further back into the background. That's why I put a decent amount of gray in this dude. I see a little of Mumra in this guy mixed with Eddie Vedder. Yeah, he still has a little Mumra, no doubt. It's such a quintessential, like, Egyptian design that it was really hard to get around that. So I'll probably revisit him. He was sort of like go round one. So we'll see what happens with him. Dr. Mask, never know where that influence is going to come from. Yeah, even if you have something in your head, like, I remember, like, when I was not very young, when I started drawing, I was a huge Kiss fan. I mean, I still am a huge Kiss fan, but everything ended up being Gene Simmons' face with his tongue out, like, every time. It didn't make a difference what I wanted to draw. It always had, like, a Kiss influence for the longest time. My notebooks were covered in Gene Simmons with his tongue out. His birthday was just the other day. I guess that's why I'm thinking about it. But yeah, I put a decent amount of shading in this character. So Horace is definitely got the most contrast. Did you get exposed to Bernie Wrightson? Not until substantially later. I actually don't know the first time I saw Bernie Wrightson stuff. Yeah, I don't know. For some strange reason, I feel like it was some of his painting stuff before I saw the comic book work. The town that I grew up in, we didn't have comic book shops. You know, I had a newsstand, so we didn't really, we just got some basic Marvel stuff for the most part. So growing up, I don't think I saw any Bernie Wrightson till much later. It is nice not drawing books for once. I draw a lot of books. So like this sort of organic clothing on this guy, and the sand and the smoke is definitely a change. Yeah, and Bernie Wrightson is definitely one of those artists that, I mean, his stuff is, it's incredible. It does seem so far from anything I could do that it makes it difficult to consider him like an influence. You know, it might sound strange, but it's not that I can draw like John Buscema, but it seemed more attainable. Even though, I mean, Buscema is a master of anatomy that I don't think I could ever get to, but at least it felt more attainable than, you know, paging through the Frankenstein stuff, which just seems impossible. Like, speaking of ancient pyramids made by the aliens, I'm wondering if the Frankenstein illustrations were actually done by aliens. Now that I think about it, somebody should look into that. Somebody get back to me. Bernie Wrightson actually had aliens come down and do the Frankenstein illustrations. I mean, obviously, after I did get exposed to him, I have compilations of like creepy and eerie, and I have a bunch of those. Black and white comics are really difficult to pull off. I just read Wolf and Batsy. Oh shoot, what number was it? I always get the numbers confused. The latest one. Damn it, what was it? I can't think of the name. It's the one with the gorilla suit maniac. Brian does such a great job of making these comics really work as black and white comics. It's really difficult to pull that off. Because he'll do really bold characters with a brush, and then he'll do like a background with a ton of detail with pen and ink, it looks like. Or a pen, I don't know. I guess I never asked him that. Getting pretty close, so I want a little more on the ground, even though it's sand, sand's tough. It just is. There's no way around it. It's mostly color. I think you and Aaron Lopresti should do a chill draw stream together. I think he'd like your style. His stuff is great. I would love that too, man. Yeah. He's so good. Yeah, so I want a little more on the ground just to give it a little bit of weight. So through a little bit. Sand is kind of like the ocean as far as drawing is concerned. Again, unless you're going to be doing stippling for the whole ground, which I could do it, but I'd finish this in about a month. So at this point, I'm kind of looking at the composition. So there's the composition of structure, and then there's composition once you start putting in the blacks and the whites. So that's sort of like a secondary level of the composition. Now if we're just looking at structure, it's got a good composition, meaning it kind of comes up into the main character, kind of comes around here, draws back, and it becomes a loop. So the composition actually works pretty well. And once I add the ink, it can potentially change the structure of the composition, because then, okay, your eye's immediately going to go to like the dark spots. So Horace's head generally is going to draw your eye just because it has the most composition. It's, you know, sometimes near the center of the page. So I have to sort of evaluate again after I do the inks, you know, if the inks have disrupted the intent of the composition. So I actually want to do I want to have a little more black on this sort of hole in the ground, because I don't want the viewer to sort of like go off the page too much. So if I put some blacks here, it kind of leads back into the picture again. Dr. Mask. Enjoyed HH2. I liked the secret room in the library and how he handled the story. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. That was a difficult double page spread, but I really wanted something that really stuck out, and it'll definitely come back into, you know, the stories. So whenever I do something like that, the idea is that, you know, all of these things will come back into play. The characters, the locations, during the ongoing. Oh, hey, Citizen Ronan, how's it going? Thanks, I appreciate that. Oh, thanks for telling Aaron about that, Citizen Ronan. That's very cool. I appreciate that. We definitely want a little more contrast. Maybe in these hands, to make sure that the eye comes down all the way to actually see these hands popping up. Composition, if you stick to a couple of simple rules, it's actually not that hard. But you also have to tell a story. So the composition, yeah, you can do a composition pretty easily that draws the viewer's eye around, but that you also have to tell a story, and you have to place characters so they can speak, and that's when things really, you have compounding sort of problems, you know, placing characters, you know, so they function, but they also they're in the right spot of the picture to keep the composition going. I have found that some people have just a knack for composition. Some people have a knack for contrast. Some people have a knack for certain things. So I want to pop Horace forward a little bit. So the best way to do that is to find the whitest spot on whatever you're trying to move forward, and basically just wherever there's white, just make it dark next to it. So like Horace's hand here, next to like that white, well, I'm totally changing the turn of the page here. Horace's hand is white and the background is white right there. If you just do a gradient back there, you know, like this, it's really going to pop his hand forward. And it's going to push the ground back. In situations like that, it doesn't have to be 100% accurate. It's about Just making sure that the drawing's doing what you want it to do. Geronimo Draws. How's it going, man? Wait a minute. You're on YouTube, but you're not streaming. How's this possible? Fabrizio, are you Wednesdays free? I bet Aaron can fit you in Graybeards, 1 p.m. West Coast time. Oh man, that would be wild and intimidating. 1 p.m. Western. That's tough. Like for work for me. Yeah, I don't think I could do that. I don't know. I could try. Maybe I'll have to see about that. Thanks though. I've caught the Graybeards maybe once or twice. Thanks, Geronimo. Thank you, sir. All right, Rob. Here's the question. Where do I put the pustules? Because right now, I'm not sure where they go. So I might need some help. Because I know you can fit them. You just tell me where the pustules go, and they're in. Is pustule consultant a job? I think I might have seen that on LinkedIn. Be finishing up here. Pretty soon. Rob must be enjoying the Sunday sauce. Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. Pustules on the right cheek, left bicep. Done. Done and done. You guys will know that there's a Horace H. Hoover Blood Rum crossover on the way when you see more pustules and slimy things in the Horace H. Hoover. Is looking good. Usually you gotta unfocus your eyes for a minute and kind of see where things are lacking. Wait, there's going to be a crossover. I'm not prepared. Yeah, I think Chiron Morville. I don't want to give spoilers, but he does wear a new helmet. That's all I'm going to say. a new large cylindrical helmet. That's all I'm gonna say. This is a no pustule zone. Yeah, this is a tentacle zone for sure. You will always find tentacles somewhere. And like decayed zombie flesh eating away sort of stuff. That is promptly in my wheelhouse. Chiron meets Horace H. Hoover. I don't know how that conversation would go. I'm gonna do. I really want to like darken this bottom area a bit. That way, it's like a foundation for the rest. And as we go up, things sort of go lighter and recede into the background. So that's what I'm gonna do now. Although my brush is really getting tacky. I really love the horse design, such a unique character. Thank you, Citizen Ronan. Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, there are times, you know, whenever I see other people's characters, I mean, it could be any sort of indie creator on Twitter, and then I look at Horace and I'm like, do they basically imagine their character beating up my character? It's like Horace is he's like the nerd, so all these other comic book characters would just beat him up or make fun of him. But little do they know, Horace does have some tricks up his sleeve, so that may be more difficult than they would imagine. And as we move on, we will definitely learn he has quite a bit, well, I don't know. I don't want to say powers. He has abilities. Considering what Chiron has witnessed, I don't think he would be too shocked at seeing Horace. No. Yeah, that's probably the least shocking thing. Probably too ordinary for Chiron. Wow, you think so technically about your work. You're like the opposite of Kelsey. I could see that. It's funny you mention that. I am hyper technical. That's why, like, for me, anatomy is like, before I could really do anything, I made sure I learned all the bones, all the muscles. I learned origins and insertions, which is like a step beyond that. Like, crazy. And I know it's almost like an OCD kind of thing for me. Probably not the greatest idea in the world, but yeah, before I really feel comfortable doing something. So I do approach it very technically. You know, I heard an interview with David Lynch the other day, and I don't know where he was on, but basically he was talking about how he eats a tuna fish sandwich every single day? He eats the same food every single day. And his explanation was, if you eat the same thing and you sort of set these habits and these routines, and there's no sort of drama or chaos in your life, your brain is a little more free to do and think up these kind of crazy scenarios. And as soon as he said that, I'm like, I totally agree. I think that's what I've always sort of, how I've approached writing. I'm very technical. I'm very strict with things. That way, it kind of leaves open the creative stuff. So that's why in the Horace, universes, some crazy stuff. You'll see some crazy stuff, and some crazy stuff will happen. And I think that's a good as any explanation for it. Beat him up, not using the Queensberry rules. I figured Horace has tricks in those pouches, not up those tight sleeves. Yeah, there's definitely there are things to come, which I am definitely excited to share with everybody. And again, he will learn about some stuff as the reader does too, and that's kind of why I've been a little. I've not hidden things, but we start in a story, so it's not like there's an origin story and we kind of go from there. We're starting in the middle. Horace is already doing stuff. He's already investigating these weird things. He's in the middle of it, but it will get to a point where he starts learning about the things he's doing as well. So that'll be pretty exciting. And hopefully you guys can see the difference there. So this bottom has a lot more weight to it and has a lot more form now. And then the further you go back, there's less form, less contrast. And then, because this is amongst other things, the composition definitely kind of goes in a circle, but it reads from bottom to top, and it kind of brings you back. Speaking of Kelsey's amazing. Richard Friend has a Patreon. I know I've mentioned this before, but he has a Patreon where he would give lessons and he would critique your work. And at the beginning of the Horace H. Hoover issue 2, I think it was the beginning of issue 2, I had him essentially look at my work. So anytime I did a penciled page, he would take a look at it. And he gave me invaluable information. I cannot thank him enough. He gave me the right information at the right time to really help me progress. So I know they have that Super Fun Sunday, which I try to catch sometimes. The bottom now looks like magic quicksand. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Now, granted, sometimes that's where the mistakes happen, and you think, oh, this bottom, this really needs some form to it, and you get in there, and yeah, that wasn't the case. But you definitely will know that next time, and you can use that mistake to not do it next time. So these hands are also obviously very close. So they should also have not quite the same rules as Horace as far as contrast, but should be pretty close. They should have close to the same amount of contrast as Horace. So I'm putting like a reflective shadow on the one side. And these are kind of zombie characters, so I'm being pretty loose with some of the inking. Just to give the impression of, you know, flesh that's kind of rotted away, or rugose. How about that for a word? Rugose. Midnight Mausoleum, let the colors take care of it. Ouch, that's true. I wish I could, darn it. I wish I could just hand that over and say, can you put some form in his leg for me or something? I do see that a lot. Obviously not as much back in the day, but current comics that I'll peruse, the colors does a lot of the form, you know, for faces or like muscles and arms, knees. I see that a lot. Colors basically creates the knees out of whole cloth. You'll be doing the coloring for your book, Midnight Mausoleum, so you know what that's like. I would like to potentially give the coloring to somebody one of these days. Potentially, I don't know. I feel like you know, after several issues now, I've definitely set a standard and a palette that they can pull from if need be. So that could potentially be a thing. Alright, I am just about done with this. Yeah, this is definitely a little looser than my normal style, but it's okay. It's concept art. It's, you know, it's a little bit of experiment, some character design. Alrighty, I think I am done. So let's see here. From the top, we got some smoke clouds. We got the pyramids, belching smoke. We have we'll call him Egyptian sorcerer. We have this little manhole that looks like it's like a metallic entrance to underground. Who knows what's going on down there. We have Horace being attacked by, looks like mummy zombie hands with some vine type things. And that's it. Alrighty. Well, thanks everybody. I really appreciate when people pop in. It's really fun. Yeah, I'll probably post this on Horace H. Hoover, maybe. If not, you'll see it on the next alternate auction, if anybody's interested in it. Maybe I will try to do a coloring of it next time. That way you can see from start to finish, inking and coloring, if anybody's interested. It's less interesting watching the coloring, but maybe I'll do a little demo of that. Yeah, thanks everybody. I really appreciate it. And I'll definitely be doing more streaming, different kinds, but inking, drawing. I do plan on at least showing the drawing of Horace H. Hoover, so actual penciled pages, which, yeah, I think that'll be a different. Hopefully, it comes out on camera well. If it doesn't, I won't spend too much time on it. But I thought that might be interesting to see the penciling process as well, as since I've only really done a lot of inking on these. So anyway, thanks again. I appreciate it and hope you guys have a great Sunday. See you later.